here's Michael Smerconish.
Hey gang, today is November 20, and on this day in 1925, Robert F. Kennedy was born, making this his 100th birthday. Perfect timing for Chris Matthews to be in studio. He's got a best-selling book in Lessons from Bobby, 10 Reasons Robert F. Kennedy Still Matters. Great to see you. You're in the midst of quite a schedule. You were in D.C. 2 nights ago, Philadelphia last night, Boston tonight.
Yeah, I've got the John F. Kennedy Library tonight. Then I'm on the a lot of my classmates from Holy Cross are going to be there. I've got a Providence, Greater Barrington this weekend, then back to Washington for the Politics and Prose bookstore, which is a big seller for books. And we'll see. It's been a heck of a week.
You're back.
Could be.
And you're having fun, by the way.
Well, if you've noticed my face, I've been having a good time, and it's been I've been on all these shows and all the networks, actually CNN a lot, and the new MS Now, and they've all been great.
Yeah, and I think, just knowing you for as many years as I have and watching you, I can just tell you're having fun, you're being well received, everybody loves this subject, and then, of course, they want to, like Michael Corleone, they want to pull you back into the politics of the day, and I'm going to pull you back into the politics of the day. But first, I want to talk about Bobby. The book is largely revolving around a number of significant speeches that he delivered. And what's nice is, Chris, we've got audio from them that'll help us tell the story. But in terms of significant Bobby speeches, this one I'm not going to play, but I do want to make reference to it. 1964, Democrats gather in Atlantic City. Were you there for that?
Well, I was working as a busboy in Ocean City.
Where?
Ocean City, New Jersey.
Right, but I mean like Bob's Grill?
Watson's, I think.
Watson's, I remember Watson's. Because my parents, that was a big night out if we went to Watson's. And if we went to Watson's, we had to be dressed properly.
And no booze, no alcohol,
booze.
None at all.
Still none.
None in that city,
so
yeah.
you worked at Watson's.
Yeah, I worked at the Chatterbox, too.
I know the Chatterbox. The Chatterbox is still there on 9th Street.
But it doesn't have the bar anymore, the counter. I was a counter boy, and I'd be watching.
Did you ever see Grace Kelly there?
A little later, but I did know she hung out at the Circle at Summers Point.
In Summers Point.
It's very romantic. She was at 29th Street. She and her family lived there. If you want to see a Grace Kelly movie, you can find one. Dial In for Murder. It is so good a movie, and she's so likable in it. And the police detective realizes that she's innocent in this crime. And Ray Milland, it's unbelievable. The bad guy in it, the one to get her killed. It's amazing. If you watch the Hitchcock movies, like Tony Perkins, they never get hurt at the end. Or they end up being sort of surviving. And he orders drinks for everybody, makes drinks for... This is Ray Milland. He's a murderer, and he makes drinks for everybody.
I love Rear Window. And I think in the same way with Jimmy Stewart. Love that. And she's beautiful in that movie. Yeah. Beautiful. But I think in the same way, like the bad guy, I think he gets led away. I'd have to go back and rewatch. Nobody gets killed at the end.
Yeah, it's Hitchcock's way. Somebody will fall down from Mount Rushmore, but not the bad guy, All
right, so you're working at Watson's, we think, as a busboy. Yeah. And what does that have to do with the convention over in Atlantic City?
I finished work one night, and I went over to the Atlantic City and got into the convention. I somehow got it. I got in somehow.
Right.
And I collected this big donkey, this Missouri mule, that's lying on the floor with all the other trash. And I go, I want that. And I hauled it out, but I go past the policeman to get it out. And as I said to the cops leaving, I said, God, this is heavier carrying it out than it was carrying it in. And the guy says, okay, you can have it. I saved that for about 20 years, that Missouri mule.
So Jack is gone, and Bobby delivers a tribute, a eulogy to his brother at that convention.
Yeah, and he was sort of buried. Lyndon Johnson was running that convention. He buried Bobby down in the basement, and he's sitting. The scene that I like is after giving that incredible speech, he sits on a fire escape basically and just cries about what happened. He didn't want that. He never wanted that role. He didn't want to be his brother's survivor, and he had devoted
too soon, Chris.
He had devoted to the '52 campaign. He was working as a civil servant in the Justice Department, making $4,000 a year. And his brother called him up and said, I need you to run my campaign. And later, Jack said, everybody hated Bobby at the end of that campaign, but it was the best organization ever politically in Boston. And he won that. And then he did 60, ran that campaign. And then he got accepted the job of Attorney General, which his father basically pushed out on Jack. And he became the best Attorney General really in modern history.
Bears his name.
The building's named after him. He took on Ross Barnett, the governor of Mississippi, Ole Miss. And people talked like this in those days. That boy, that's what the governor said, that boy is not going to Ole Miss. Well, he did go to Miss. They have a statue of him now. And by the way, all Alabama and all those southern schools, SEC schools, we watch the football games. They're heavily integrated. African Americans are all over the football field and basketball court. So it's real integrated. And if you ask one of those kids down there, white kids, did you know there was Bobby Kennedy integrated this school that just opened it up? It was imagine this, in the 1960s, an entirely white university, the campus, all those schools, entirely white, no black people, even though there were 15 to 20% of the state were black. None of them allowed in. It's incredible that we were that bad about it. So the theme of my book is, if you want America to be great, try at your best to make it good. Do the right things. And I think people agree that was the right thing to do.
1966, so now 2 years beyond the convention, Bobby is in Cape Town. Why is he there, and what is the significance of this visit?
He's invited by the white student organization to speak to them on a day of affirmation, which is a day about believing what they believe in. And he came in to oppose apartheid, but he cleverly didn't actually confront it. He talked about a country that was settled by the Dutch, and then the British came in and took over, and then eventually became an independent country. But it still had a problem with African people in the country. And you'd think he's talking about South Africa. And then he said, I'm talking, of course, about the United States of America.
I want to play a clip. This is Robert F. Kennedy in South Africa. He's in Cape Town, June 6, 1966.
Thousands of unknown men and women in Europe resisted the occupation of the Nazis, and many died, but all added to the ultimate strength and freedom of their countries. It is from numberless diverse acts of courage such as these that the belief that human history is thus shaped. Each time a man stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance.
The ripple of hope speech is the way it gets remembered.
Yeah, I think that's about, he talked about Thomas Jefferson being 30-some years old and how individuals can change history, especially when they converge. I'm speaking to the Robert Kennedy Foundation tomorrow with Kerry Kennedy. She runs it, his daughter.
So by 1968, and he wavers, right? He's not sure whether to go in 68 or whether to wait until 72.
He's petrified by the reality, which a lot of senators are today, worried about what the consequences will be if he runs in 68. He would be breaking with the Democratic Party, taking on all the big city, like Richard Daley, people like that, taking on all the power structure, and knowing that Johnson will try to destroy him. And he could wait till 1972 and walk into the presidency. And his brother, Teddy, and Ted Sorensen, his older brother's speechwriter, all said, wait, don't run now, don't do this thing. But Jack Newfield, who was writing for the New York Daily News at the time, said, if he doesn't run in 68, he will have lost his soul.
So March 16, 1968, Robert F. Kennedy announces his candidacy.
I am announcing today my candidacy for the presidency of the United States. I do not run for the presidency merely to oppose any man, but to propose new policies. I run because I am convinced that this country is on a perilous course, and because I have such strong feelings about what must be done, and I feel that I'm obliged to do all that I can I run to seek new policies. Policies to end the bloodshed in Vietnam and in our cities. Policies to close the gaps that now exist between black and white, between rich and poor, between young and old, in this country and around the rest of the world.
May I mention to Chris Matthews, who knows this, but to everybody else who's listening, that in Chris's new book, this bestseller, Lessons from Bobby, I'm sitting here following the transcript because in the appendix, you actually have the transcripts of several of these speeches. And let me also remind people that you wrote speeches. You were a speechwriter for President Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there, I'm watching you, and you're kind of shaking your head as you're listening to these words. What's running through your mind?
Well, Ted Sorensen wrote a lot for Jack Kennedy. I think Bobby argued the case for running for president against an incumbent Democratic president was he wanted to change the policy in Vietnam from building more and more troops, 500,000 at the time. And he also didn't like the fact we're wasting our money over there. He said, the Kerner Commission came out on racial unrest in the United States and said, we have to spend money on the cities. We have to turn that wealth we're spending overseas to the cities. And he saw that Lyndon Johnson, who had commissioned that commission, didn't go along with that, didn't want to do it. He also thought that Gene McCarthy, another anti-war candidate, didn't want to do that either. He was the only one focusing on the cities. And maybe that's because he was a senator from New York, but he did think the cities need help, as opposed to President Donald Trump today, who's basically going at war with the big cities. He wanted to help them.
And wanted to help, in particular, people of color.
Yeah, I mean, he was for civil rights. And the thing about him that distinguishes him from some of these rowdy DAs that, let him out sort of guys, he was very good on civil rights, but tough on crime. He was an Irish cop. He thought law and order was important. He would use the phrase law and order. Imagine a liberal saying that today. We need law and order in this country. He didn't like the riots that came about after Dr. King was killed in Washington. All 14th Street was burnt down. A black neighborhood. It was self-defeating. Why would you burn your own neighborhood down? And he said that was wrong. Carrie Kennedy, again I mentioned her, was sitting in their home together watching the burning of Washington, and he said this is wrong.
April 4, 1968, Bobby's a candidate. MLK Jr. has just been assassinated. Robert F. Kennedy finds himself in Indianapolis. This is stunning. The crowd doesn't know. Let's all listen.
I have some very sad news for all of you, and that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis.
It's amazing to think in the world in which we live that we're all dialed in and our phones and so forth, but 1968, there's no internet, obviously. He's breaking the news.
He was speaking that afternoon at Notre Dame University in Indiana, and he got the word of what had happened, and he got to this neighborhood. It's called Brooklyn neighborhood in Indianapolis, a black neighborhood, and he was told by the local police, we're not going in with you, Senator. We're not riding shotgun on you. We're not going in to protect you. You got to go in alone. So he was worried about what he said to one of the guys with him, John Lewis, I think it was. What should I say? He gets to the truck, open-bedded truck, and he stands on the truck, and he asks the NBC technician there, do they know yet? And the guy says to him, I heard this on tape, and the guy said, no, they don't know. So as you just heard there, his first statement was, he's been killed, and I believe he said he was killed by a white man.
So there's an important part of this speech that I know is significant to you and that I want to also play and have Chris Matthews evaluate.
For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times.
Chris Matthews, talk to me. What's going on in that graph? By the way, he's speaking extemporaneously, right?
Right.
There's obviously no prompter.
No
There's
speechwriter.
no notes. Go ahead. Evaluate that.
He first of all, it was the first time and the last time he referred to his brother being assassinated. A member of my family was killed by a wife.
I thought that was interesting. Was killed.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was pretty graphic. I mean, the thing about Bobby is, as I said to you a few minutes ago, he spent his whole life supporting him. That's what he did, was help his older brother. And the night of his brother being killed in Dallas, he was in the Lincoln bedroom crying and praying at the same time. And Chuck Spaulding, a very close friend of Jack's, was listening through the door, and he was like, "Why, Dad? Why, Dad? Why, God? Could you let this happen? Everything was going so well. Why have you done this?" I mean, he had to get Greek and think about it in weird mythical terms. Why would, when things were going so well, we had just signed the missile crisis, the missile testing record for surface testing. We had gotten through the Cuban Missile Crisis. Things were going okay, and his brother was shot out of nowhere, and he was praying basically to try to get an explanation of why this happened. And so when he talked about a member of my family being killed, I thought at the time, and I was in grad school, I guess, I thought at the time that was an odd thing to say. My brother was killed by a white man. Because he was white, so there wasn't a racial aspect to it, a tribal aspect.
But was he trying to tamp down any potential for violence or revolt?
I think he was trying to say, the guy talking to you right now, me, knows what suffering is, and you can only understand me when I talk to you like this about calming it down. That I've been through this, and that maybe I can help. And he did. That city never erupted. Other cities did, like Washington. And it was a horrific time. I mean, this is a tough time, too, but nothing like the people racially exploding.
Chris Matthews has a best-selling book. It's fabulous. It's called Lessons from Bobby. Today is the 100th birthday of Robert F. Kennedy. We'll come back to our studio with our special guest in just a moment, talk more about Robert F. Kennedy and talk about contemporary politics.
They call me the seeker.
On what would have been the 100th birthday, November 20, 1925, of Robert F. Kennedy. Chris Matthews is in studio. He's just published a book. It's called Lessons from Bobby. I'm not giving it all away, Chris, but we are walking through a lot of the points that you make and using some of the audio to sort of flesh out the story. So, okay, it's 1968. He is in the race. Now it's the California primary. Sadly, at the Ambassador Hotel, Sirhan takes his life. Talk to me first about the assassination, and then I want to talk about the politics of what would have come of that race.
Yeah, I think a lot of dynamics there. He had to run. He decided very late to run. He didn't run until the day before St. Patrick's Day in 1968. Gene McCarthy had announced as an anti-war candidate in November of 67, way ahead of him, and he grabbed effectively all the college kids, the intellectuals, if you will, Jewish people, a lot of people that were Adlai Stevenson supporters from the old days, and Gene McCarthy had endorsed Stevenson back in 60. So he had that advantage. So when Bobby went into the California primary, which he had to win, he said, "I will quit this election if I don't win the primary." He had to work with blacks and Hispanics, and he campaigned in the roughest neighborhoods. He would expose himself physically in a way you can't imagine. He said, "You have to let people touch you, not just listen to you." And they would steal take his shoes, his cufflinks. Incredible. And you keep saying,
just because they wanted, out of affinity for him, they wanted a piece of him, literally.
They wanted a touch of him. And it was like, and he said, "I have to do that to win, effectively to win." And he did that. And but he'd also make an effort to show that he was with both communities, white and black. He would campaign through the streets of Gary, Indiana, a working-class white town, I guess, and he would put Tony Zale, the middleweight fighter, on the left side of the guy who beat Graziano twice out of 3 times, and then he would have Richard Hatcher, the first African-American mayor, on the other side of him in an open car, driving around the city like this. And he did a lot of things that identified with the not successful person. He was an enlisted guy in the Army, unlike his brothers who were officers. At Harvard even, he hung out with the jocks. He was at the varsity club. He wouldn't go to the elite social clubs. his father called him, this is interesting, his father called him the runt of the litter. Imagine having your father call you that, because he wasn't as tall or as glamorous as his older brothers, who were all 6-footers. I think he had this natural affinity for people who weren't getting great breaks.
I didn't know that he lived to have a dying gasp, but I learned from Chris Matthews, quote, "Is everyone all right?"
Yeah, he was worried about everybody else getting shot. It was close comfort. There were a lot of people in that little kitchen at the Ambassador Hotel. And as someone said, he spent his life with basically aristocrats, the people with money, the celebrities, the movie stars, the mountain climbers, the astronauts, the financiers, and he ended up reaching for the hand of a $75 a week Mexican-American dishwasher. That's where he ended up. And as Arthur Schlesinger, the great historian, said, he must have known how it was going to end.
So Bobby had eulogized Jack at the 64 convention, as we've discussed, and now it falls to Teddy at St. Patrick's Cathedral, June 8, 1968, to eulogize Bobby.
My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life. To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it.
Wow. I mean,
Those of us who love
what prose appropriate, just incredible.
Yeah, I think you have to wonder about the condition of Teddy Kennedy after all that. I mean, he lost his oldest brother in World War II on an insane bombing mission. They were going to let the plane fly into the target. They were going to jump out by parachute. I mean, it was incredible on mainland Europe to try to get to the V-2 rockets to stop the last stand of the Nazis. And then he sees Jack killed, and he sees Bobby killed. God, 3 out of 4 brothers, and you're like the next number there on the list. Chappaquiddick's terrible. It's horrible. He was responsible. He was drunk probably. Horrible, but something was going on there mentally.
What if Bobby had lived? Game out for me what happens in 68.
Well, one thing would have been different. We all remember, a lot of us my age do, the horror of the 68 Democratic Convention in Chicago, where you had something called, from one perspective, the police riot. From another perspective, you don't think us thinking about that. The student behavior, which was awful. They were prodding the police, threatening them, throwing terrible things at them, and Richard Daley engaged. So I think if Bobby had got to the convention, it would have been Bobby against Humphrey and LBJ. It would have been a much more lively, positive convention with people really competing for the job of presidential nominee. Who knows what would have happened?
Well, if he won the nomination in 68, it would have, just like it was in 60, been Kennedy versus Nixon, obviously a different Kennedy.
I think that if he had gotten the nomination, I think he would have beaten Nixon.
Why do you say that?
Because I did a lot of work on this in a book called Kennedy and Nixon, and I think the people on the Nixon side were shook, a lot of them. Oh, my God, here's Kennedy again. I remember Nixon saying, this is going to unleash on strange things. This is going to be a very dangerous thing, this running of Bobby. That Bobby's going to be dead. Bobby had the charm of Jack, and he could have done it again.
So after Bobby's passing...
And by the way, the Kennedy administration was very successul. People forget what it's like to have a president with a 68% positive approval. And we don't have presidents like that. Even Obama wasn't that popular. We don't have vastly, like Eisenhower was vastly positive. We don't have people like that anymore in the White House.
Chris, after his passing, there's a remarkable outpouring. I want you to tell it, but it begins in New York and it extends all the way to Washington.
I talked about how he dealt with the killing of Martin Luther King,
right,
Dr. King.
In Indy.
And so what happened was he was killed in California. His body was taken to New York for the funeral at St. Patrick's Cathedral, the beautiful cathedral in Manhattan. And then he was put on the train at Penn Station and taken to Arlington Cemetery in Washington. Along that train route was something really miraculous. The way the country came together in the strangest way. In Philadelphia here at the 30th Street Station, 20,000 people, African-American people, were singing Battle Hymn of the Republic from the Civil War. They were singing it out loud and spontaneously. And then all through the city, between the cities of Philadelphia and Trenton and Newark, were white people looking like former enlisted men, because they were saluting, most of them, with their kids, in one case, in birth order next to them. And they were so devoted to Kennedy. It was extraordinary. So in their different ways, the white and black community, if you will, were just so supportive. And it was tears. It was tears of feeling. And I learned one thing, and just to rework it on this past year, the people that live closest to the train tracks, and anybody who's taken a Acela knows this, are poor. If you live within walking distance of the train tracks, you don't have any money. It's noisy. It's grimy. You don't want to be there. It's loud. So all the poor whites in those days were in the same situation as the blacks, and it was a tough world. And the ones who showed up, he came walking and there's no parking spaces along the train tracks. They came out of feeling for him.
You wrote these words when you were, previous to the book being published, talking about the funeral procession and the train ride. Quote, "He was and could have been a unifier. He may have been the last national leader who held an allegiance for so many poor and working people, white and black and brown."
Yeah, I think that was true. And I think it was supporting civil rights, supporting law and order. It's the combination. And feeling. I think people said, it was, again, Arthur Schlesinger who said that Bobby looked like somebody that needed protection from us. And Jack looked like somebody who didn't need protection. They both, of course, needed protection in the end. But Bobby looked to be a smaller guy, a more vulnerable guy, who at the same time could be ferocious. Him against those Southern governors is for real. And him against the frightening mobsters that he took on in the Rackets Committee in the late 50s, which really made his name, taking on all of them, the Torch, the guy that burnt people to death, and to put reporters' eyes out, and Giancana. These guys they were not like the Marlon Brando in the movies. They weren't likable. They hung up bodies on hooks. They were like the Johnny Friendly and On the Waterfront. They were the real bad guys. And I don't even know how he faced them down. I mean, people today have bodyguards around them, surrounding them to protect them. But these guys were actual killers.
Lessons from Bobby is the title of the book. I will not keep Chris Matthews all to myself. Now's your opportunity to pose a question or a comment. We'll talk some contemporary politics with the former host of Hardball in just a moment. Hey, we're fortunate to have Chris Matthews in studio. He was just complimenting me on actually reading the book. I always reading the. Who doesn't read the books?
Oh, Larry King.
Right.
Larry King used to. He never saw the movies either. He always had a great picture.
He was, his shtick was to say, I want to be in the same position as the audience, and the audience has yet to read the book, so I don't want to. I always thought that was such a cop out.
Yeah, I thought so. But I used to do with David Gergen, the late David Gergen, and I would do these commentaries late in the middle of the night, like after midnight. He had a great strength, which Larry King was great at post midnight. You want a sleepy, somewhat questionable guy in the middle of the night when you're driving across the country. You want Larry King with that. Who was the hair guy, straightening the hair?
Don King.
Interviewing Don King, because they're both sort of gambling types, and you go
totally.
And I get it's very smoky. And there's something about it. But when he switched to daytime, nobody listened to him.
Right.
But nobody wants Larry King at noon.
I totally
you
understood.
want him at midnight.
This is Aaron in Virginia for Chris Matthews. Aaron, quickly, what did you want to say to Chris?
Hi, Chris. Hi, Michael. I worked for the RFK Center for many years, and I just wanted your opinion on the family's opinion as far as Sirhan Sirhan being pardoned.
Well, they've taken a tough position. They want him in prison. They don't want him out, and I think it's probably because of what he did, of course. But then he hasn't really admitted that he shouldn't have done it. He didn't go through that thing about getting ready to get clemency. He didn't say he did wrong. He's a Christian from Palestine, from this, I think. Jerusalem, and it was a political crime.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. The Voldemort of your book, and we may as well have this conversation now. You thought I set you up last night because I went there first. Bobby, the other Bobby, Jr., doesn't get mentioned in your book. And when she mentions Sirhan, it reminds me, I've had this conversation with RFK Jr. He doesn't think that Sirhan acted alone.
Well, I don't believe what he says. And I warn people not to believe what he says.
Because?
Because he did commit the crime. Now, I don't think Bobby knows any more than either of us knows. I think he says things for provocation purposes. I mean, first of all, everybody's entitled to their conspiracy theories or theories of what might have happened. But you got to give me evidence that something happened. So, and that is the questions now about the CIA and not getting all the information to the Warren Commission. Ted Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy both believed in the Warren Commission. That's in Ted's memoir. And the idea that somebody knows more, please tell me what you know. You can't just throw stuff out there. He was right there with the gun, pointing the gun at him and shot him. What more evidence do you need?
So you made a conscious decision, I guess, to completely leave Bobby out of this book.
Well, I didn't want to. Look, he was 14 years old when his father was killed. He was crying at this Good Samaritan hospital. I called him up when I wrote the book. I said, I've done the book. It's positive about your father. It doesn't mention you. No controversy. And thanked him. That's all I said. What
did he say?
Not much. And all I can tell you is I don't want to talk about him. I want to talk about the great name that he got and inherited from his father. And it has to be reminded of, why is the RFK name so powerful? It's because of the stories we've been talking about this morning.
Okay, but indulge me just one question
anybody
further.
Who wastes time reading about this guy who's got real chemical problems in his life.
Here we go. Now we're playing hardball.
No, this is serious business. Look at his background. Look at where he is.
Okay,
and ask, why did he get appointed to this position?
Let me ask
what was
this question.
The purpose of giving him this position? We had measles, we had polio, we've conquered them. Shut up.
Do you see any of the father in the son in a redeeming way?
Before the anti-vax stories and claims, which are not valid, I remember him as an environmentalist on the Hudson River.
Okay, it's a
the
good
Rubber
thing.
Keepers. I remember him. I was with him down in Baja California in Mexico.
You were?
Yeah. And I thought he was courageous, arrogant, but courageous. And I had that memory of him. But this whole thing is absurd. And I don't want it to distract from the story of how his father was such a great man.
Tom, you're in Louisiana for Chris Matthews. Quickly, what did you most want to say?
Chris, I missed you on MSNBC, but I just finished Robert Caro's book, 4th volume of LBJ, and he painted a less than flattering picture of our RFK. He wasn't a new age sensitive guy. I just wanted what you thought about that.
Well, Caro has come around on LBJ, and I guess he figures it's a zero-sum game. You have to take sides. I don't know. I don't think he's an expert on RFK.
Tom, thank you for that. I appreciate it. This is Jeff in Massachusetts. Quickly, Jeff, for Chris Matthews. We're limited on time.
Yes, I'd just like to say one thing. I'm 78 years old. I grew up in the 60s, and I was pro-civil rights. When Bobby ran for president, we believed he could have picked Martin Luther King as VP, and they probably could have won, and that would have brought the poor white and the black people together, and life would have been very different. But we all know what happened. The civil rights movement still needs to be solved. And what John Kennedy said, what can you do for your country? And what Reagan said, run away from government. Mike, in all due respect, that contradiction, there's no middle ground between it.
Chris Matthews,
that's all I have to say. I'll hang up.
Quick reaction to Jeff.
Well, I did research on this, and just getting to the question of ask not what your country can do for you. I think that came from his prep school at Choate, where he went to school, John F. Kennedy. I got the headmaster's notes from his chapel readings each week, and one of the phrases in it, which somebody was very kind to show me when I was up there at Choate, was ask not what your school can do for you. Ask what you can do for your school.
I remember you uncovered that in a prior book.
So
right.
I knew
that was a great
came.
find.
I know it.
Were you like, holy smokes?
Yes, I was holy smokes. And because Ted Sorensen, the speechwriter, never took credit for that. And I understood why.
Remaining moments in just a sec with Chris Matthews. Chris Matthews, a little off the grid of RFK, but I want to ask your opinion. Every day, as you know, there's a poll question at Smerconish.com. Yesterday, I asked, has the Epstein saga permanently ruptured President Trump's hold on MAGA? 56.69% said no, it has not ruptured that hold. Do you agree with that?
I'm with 56%.
Why?
Because Trump has political talent. He has spontaneity, the ability to respond to the moment, the very moment we're in, at any moment. He is unlike a Schumer or anybody else or a Joe Biden. Most politicians sort of are still. They're not quite dynamic. His ability goes back to television when he first went on my kind of show. He can react to the moment. This movie made it. This other movie won't make it. He has a reaction to commercials, to the advertising, to everything that's coming into our heads from every direction. He's aware of that. For some reason, politicians cut themselves off from that. And maybe Gavin Newsom in California, maybe it takes somebody somewhat of a lightweight in a way to connect.
Do you think Newsom's a lightweight?
Most people have always said empty suit.
What about you? You're the one who's here.
What do I think?
Yeah.
I believe he's potentially able, because he can compete with Trump in that stratosphere up there,
right,
that he may be able to connect in this election.
I don't understand. I know that it's unseemly to be associated with a guy who is a convicted pedophile. Everybody knows the Epstein story as far as we know it, right? I don't understand, having read all these emails that are the most incriminating, the Democrats say, of Trump. I don't get his resistance. I don't understand the way he's handled this. Do you?
He's talked to the.
Do you?
No, because he talks to the Speaker of the House in some language we don't understand. How does he tell Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, keep this off the floor? How does he get to the Senate leader? Keep this off the Senate floor. And then in one day, on Sunday this week, they go from morning to evening, and by the time they get to evening, they're all 100% for it. They're all robotic about it.
I don't get it.
How does he, when he's in the back room, how does he explain it? That's what I don't understand.
I don't get it either. Billy is in Washington, D.C. Billy, we're limited on time. Chris, quickly for Chris Matthews.
I just wanted to say I worked for RFK Jr. As his advance director. The things coming out about RFK Jr. have been a lot negative. And when I joined his campaign, I was able to travel around this country and speak to lefties and righties. The one thing that I think that is missing from the upper echelon of journalism and news is, quite frankly, the fact that Americans want something straightforward. They want to have the dialogue and the conversation. I got up off my butt and went to volunteer as a 53-year-old man for RFK Jr. because my family has vaccine injury, medicine injury to the point of near death. And so I got up and went and volunteered.
Okay, can I say wait, because we don't have time and I'm not inclined. You've leveled the playing field from what Chris had to say, and I want to keep moving. Dwayne, you're in New York City. Quickly for Chris Matthews.
Hey, Chris, I met you near my Times Square stand. Mike, I'm the Times Square bomber. Found the bomb back on May 1st.
This guy, hang on a second, Dwayne, hang on. Chris, this guy is the one who dropped the dime on the would-be Times Square bomber.
Oh, yeah.
And he runs a stand. I visited him. What's the intersection, Dwayne?
45th and 7th Avenue near the Lion King.
Are you standing out there right now?
I'm on my way into the stand. I'm having a mingling reunion at Boston University on September 17th, 2026. It's my 50th reunion for the class of 76. It's also my birthday, so I'm telling everybody to come to Boston, come to BU.
Thank you.
Mingle. That's what we've got.
Thank you, Dwayne. I appreciate it. By the way, on that note, you're headed to Boston. Where are you going to be so that I can tell our audience, go out and say hello to Chris?
Tonight I'll be at the JFK Library.
Can people go there?
Oh, yeah, John F. Kennedy Library.
Okay, so go see Chris tonight at the Kennedy Library, and then you're going to do Politics and Prose?
In D.C. By the way, the Kennedy family have a position about the RFK Jr. situation.
See, we can never get out of this rabbit hole once it comes up.
Well, that guy brings it up. Why did he go volunteer working for RFK Jr.?
Because he said his family was vax-injured.
Yeah, a lot of people have had measles shots and have had polio shots, and for those reasons have survived. And that's millions of people. And to go out there and put in their heads question marks about it is a dangerous thing.
Okay, we have 30 seconds left. I want to say something to you, okay? For 5 years, I guest hosted Hardball when you were on vacation, and it was a privilege for me to do it. So thank you for allowing me to do that. It was a very important part of my life.
Thank you.
And by the way, Phil Griffin then came to me and said, Smirk, we love you. But we, I almost screwed it up. We are liberal and nerdy. And what else, TC?
Young, liberal, and nerdy.
We are young, liberal, and nerd, and you're none of the above. So keep doing what you're doing for Chris, but you're never getting a gig here. And you know what, Chris? I appreciated his honesty.
Yeah, let's go with that.
All right, come back. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, pal. This was fun.
Thank you.
Can we do it for 2 more hours?
Maybe. Thank you very much.
All right.